This is a Minecraft world with nations, war, and diplomacy, and we will be talking about the second battle of this series of the Pillager Wars. Let's head to the battlefield. This is a new village that the United States had constructed with supplies from the Marlian Empire, Fishyland, and more. Pillagers were on their way to the village, but little did they know many nations' leaders and armies would be there to meet them, and they were fully equipped and ready to fight. Pillagers land troops by the ocean with a pretty small army, so they are easily able to take on this army fairly quickly. The Pillagers are so far no match, but that is all to change here very shortly. Further north, a slightly larger army had landed and began to attack the city. The lines adjusted to take on the threat. This took about the same time as the first wave to kill, and so far it was smooth sailing, but as I said earlier, it will get much harder. But so far, no casualties have been taken for the players. The lines adjusted looking for the next wave, but another army slightly larger came from the same side and began to hit the lines. They both fought with everything they had, and the first Ravagers appeared in combat. Village Iron Golems joined the combat in aid of the players, defending their village. But yet again, this was an easy wave, and even faster than the first two. The next wave was a breeze, so let's just cut to the point. Witches were introduced, and they got destroyed. Now let's move on to the next wave. This next wave gets a little more complicated. Essentially, the Pillagers had surrounded the village and were coming in from all sides, more specifically the north side of Kizilin, Czechoslovakia's land, which was not good considering everyone had to readjust for this weird new offensive the Pillagers had set up. As they met the lines, it was a hard fight. The lines were smashed inwards like your typical fender bender. A lot of the shots they'd got off had to be done from far away with arrows as Pillager lines rushed in. The players started taking their first casualties and had to retreat multiple times. The time turned to night, and now phantoms started coming down, which was unplanned for, and helped out the Pillagers a lot. Thankfully, this wave did eventually go down, and somewhat easily despite the casualties. The surrounding and hard hits would continue as more and more phantoms spawned, and the waves got even more difficult and even more difficult. Despite this being difficult, the players somehow took this wave out faster than most of the waves, as most of the forces were stuck in a cave and they had fallen into. However, the phantoms that were estimated to be around 20 to 30 that night still kept attacking and not making it easy. This next wave hit hard. The wave hurt the lines the worst so far. Many casualties would result from this, and the first cracks in the defense would show. Morale was low as leaders were mad at each other for not following orders or making this more difficult on each other. The lines were hit hard and many soldiers were chased back and forced to retreat during all of this. The villagers in the village were hiding in the safety of the walls of the village. United States soldiers from the first battle were brought in, and it was unknown when this happened, but the first casualty of the United States elite forces would take place. The United States Army in shambles completely split up, making calls based on what happened as the battle goes. Fishyland units were also struggling. However, Marlian Empire lines were pretty smart with retreating and managed to minimize losses and maximize kills. This wave continues on for quite some time, but eventually, after about 5 to maybe 10 minutes, the wave is finished up. As the soldiers sat there, they thought the battle was won until one last wave showed up, which would be the largest force the Pillagers had sent yet in the entire war. Pillagers charged straight at the village so fast, the players had no time to react and threw themselves at the enemy. Almost immediately, Fishyland and the United States soldiers had to pull back to heal themselves, while the Marlian Empire and Kizilin, Czechoslovakia lines were left to hold on. As U.S. soldiers pretty quickly re-entered the battle, they were not much help and were decimated. Pillagers started attempting to break the wall down and get the villagers inside. The players were not going to let that happen, so they organized a massive push to get them back from the walls, which was very successful and was probably one of the single moves that helped them the most. The Pillagers, Evokers, and more even started taking heavy losses. After a minute or two more of fighting, the raid was eventually defeated, and the Pillagers were sent home, and the battle was a victory for the players.